In today's show, the biggest questions facing the Trailblazers that aren't about Damian Lillard. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen. 3 days a week in August and into September. A little summer break before we get back to our typical Monday through Friday, 5 days a week madness as we get caught up with the season. In today's show, we're talking the biggest questions that aren't Damian Lillard. We've spent a lot of time this summer answering and not answering and asking the Damian Lillard question. What's happening? What are they going to do? When's it going to happen? Why are Heat fans the way they are? We know we've delved into it from a bunch of different angles, but I think it is worth, at least for your sanity and for just a change of pace, to discuss sort of the biggest questions that are facing this team that aren't Dame related. To be clear, all this stuff's Dame related. It's all interchangeable. The ecosystem is unsettled and uncertain because Damian Lillard's future is unsettled and uncertain. Whether and if there is a resolution, it's going to change all of the answers that we try to pose now. But I think working through where they are will help us a little bit figure out where they need to go and kind of give you take a temperature of what this team looks like in the middle of August. We're still 6 weeks out from media day and 2 full months away from more than 60 days away from the start of the regular season. But it's getting down to it where the Blazers roster is unfinished, but it might just be weird until something happens into the season. So let's answer the biggest questions. And I think the big pressing one that folks are asking is, where does Shaedon Sharpe play? My assumption, and very clear assumption, is that Scoot Henderson, assuming that Damian Lillard is not on the roster or whatever, that Scoot Henderson starts at the 1 and or whatever there is kind of vague. I meant if they agree to let him stay home. I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll show up and play 35 minutes if he's still on the roster, and the Blazers will have a weird situation on their hands. But if Dame's not there, I think Scoot Henderson is going to start at the 1, and Anthony Simons is going to continue to start at the 2. Ant's probably a point guard somewhere in his future, but for now he'll continue to play shooting guard, which he basically has every single game of the season of his career, except for when Damian Lillard has been out. So that leaves a question of, where does Shaedon Sharpe fit? He's a 2 to me in the future. He's like a prototypical 2 plus length on the wings. I've said this a bunch. Like, he can play 3, more on that in a moment. And in theory, he's like he could play, a chunk of small forward. But like, the best teams in the league are plus size at the wing. So instead of being a little bit small at the 3, why not just be the right size / a little bit bigger at 2? Why, instead of playing an undersized small forward, play a kind of like a shooting guard with length? That seems to be just what good teams do, plus size on the wings. The question is kind of, can the 3 guards, Scoot, Simons, and Shaedon Sharpe, coexist? I think in small samples and on a team that isn't trying to be super competitive, yeah, it's fine. But sort of generally speaking, if Damian Lillard's not in the mix, more on that in a moment, the math is pretty simple. I think you can pencil Scoot Henderson in for about 30 to 33 minutes, roughly, maybe even more, but 33-ish minutes a night as a rookie. I think that's what you want. You want him to play a bunch and figure out what he can do. Then in the 33 minutes that he is in, if he plays 33 minutes, there's 15 remaining point guard minutes. Anthony Simons can play every bit of those minutes that Scoot is off the court. That's kind of how Ant has done in the past, is that he starts at the 2 and plays backup point guard, nominally backup point guard. CJ McCollum played a similar role. You get control of the second unit, all of that. That's simple. That is simple kind of Anthony Simons comes out early, first out, first back. That's simple math. If Ant is going to play 15 minutes at the 2, he's going to play about 35 minutes in the game. That means, or 15 minutes at the backup 1, play about 35 minutes in a game. That's just what good players play in the league. And if Ant played last year, you can pencil him for those minutes if he's on the roster. Then he plays 20 minutes at shooting guard. That leaves, it's 48 minutes at each position. That leaves 28 clean minutes for Shaedon Sharpe to play shooting guard. I don't think I don't think Shaedon Sharpe needs to play 35 minutes a game next year, but I think he needs to push towards 30 if the Blazers are really trying to figure out what they got. It's not like a crime if he averages 27 a game or whatever it might be, but if he's playing in that 24 and below range, that's a big problem. He needs to play starters minutes, which is north of 27, 28, 29, and pushing above 30. And if he plays above 30, that's totally great. That's totally great. But just like the simple, you do not have to play by my sort of basic math I've laid out here. If Scoot and Ant are on the roster, there's 28 shooting guard minutes to be had by Shaedon Sharpe, even as a bench player. Very simple. Very simple. It's 28 minutes as a bench, as shooting guard coming off the bench. He can play big minutes, and that doesn't stretch anyone. That keeps it at 33 for Scoot and 35 for Ant. That's not tricky. They don't have to make the math work. And if you need to play Shea a little bit longer, like if you want to push his 28 to 34, he plays a little bit of small forward in each half. Pretty simple. That seems relatively easy. You throw Damian Lillard in the mix, it gets all messy because Dame's going to play 35, right? He's going to play normal minutes. I think there is a world in which he agrees to not play, although I think that is very, 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 very slim. If they don't trade him, I think he's going to show up. He's going to say, "Okay, cool, I'm here. Play me normal minutes. Thanks for having me involved. I'm ready to go. I'm going to play 35 minutes." He's just not going to he's not going to agree to leave. Whatever you think that means. He's not going to agree to leave. I think there is a non-zero chance that they do work out something where he's away from the team. But I do not think, and I mean this, I want to be clear, I think 35 or 0 is really the option. I don't think there's a world where Damian Lillard comes back and plays 28 minutes a night. If he's there, he's going to play star minutes. That's just that's the price of not trading him, is that you have to play him minutes, right? That's just kind of how this works. So it gets tricky if everybody's there, but if not, there's a clean path for Shaedon Sharpe to play shooting guard minutes and play a little bit of small forward. And it's really simple. And you don't have, but if you want to play all three of them together, based on my math, you're really not getting that much time with the three of them together. If you can mix and match the lineups to get the Oops All Guards, Scoot, Shea, and Simon's lineup together. I'm not sure there's a ton of long-term upside in seeing it, but seeing all three combinations play together, to see each of the three guys play together in various combinations, there's value in that. And I think the biggest question is, can the three of them play together? And I don't think you have to answer it. I think the big question facing the Blazers is, can Shaedon Sharpe play small forward? But you're asking that because you want to play him next to two guards. And I think what you should be asking is, what's the point of playing all these small guards? Anthony Simons is a good basketball player. I think he's very clearly the best guard on the Blazers roster right now. I don't even think that's really debatable. You hope that you can debate that at some point, and then it gets messier. The goal for the young guys, for Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe, is to make it a debate. Because right now, Ant's going to play a ton of minutes because he deserves to play a ton of minutes because he's the best guard on the roster. But what you're hoping for is that when you get to January and February, it's wow, Shaedon Sharpe's really taken off. We have to get him more minutes. What do we do with Ant? You hope that question comes up. But for now, I think there's a clear path to Sharpe playing 28 minutes. So if you have friends asking, where does Sharpe fit? How does it work? The math is pretty simple, unless Dame's on the roster, and it continues to complicate everything. The Blazers want to rebuild. They just don't want to get ripped off in the process of launching the rebuild. So the Dame trade will hang over it. The Dame question hangs over all of the other questions. Okay, I want to talk about Nassir Little. In light of kind of how the guard rotation works, let's talk a little bit about the forward rotation. That is a big question for me. We'll do that in the second segment. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel. Look, the NFL regular season is right around the corner. It starts in about a little over 3 weeks, just shy of a month. And right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win during the regular season. So you place a futures bet on any team to win a Super Bowl before the year starts, and you get bonus bets for every every victory that team has during the year. And then you use those bonus bets, those free bets that are going to be in the FanDuel app for things like spreads and player props and over-unders. Whatever you're looking for, get in on some fun NFL betting by picking a Super Bowl winner in August. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. Start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. All right. So the big question about where does Shaedon Sharpe fit and where does Anthony Simons fit, I think the simple math is Damian Lillard's not there. They can all fit together. They can all play sort of the right amount of minutes, pushing towards 30 with no pushing towards and above 30 with no real problem. But I think there are other questions on this roster. As you just sort of move up the line, which we're going to do in this show, if you're catching on to the structure, we started with guards. Now we're moving to forwards. Pretty much pencil in Jeremy Grant for 35 minutes. I don't think that's that tricky. I assume Matisse Thybulle will start at small forward. It just makes more sense. It makes the most sense. He doesn't need to play a ton of minutes. The Blazers aren't like so deeply invested in Thybulle that if he plays 18 to 20, that's totally cool. He's kind of that level of player that it would be totally functional for him to play half the game or less, in that range. So that's fine. The question then becomes after Thybulle, who plays those backup 3 minutes? I think some people said, oh, those would be Sharpe because you got to figure out where him and Ant and Scoot fit. I think without Dame on the roster, that's simple. That's actually not true. You don't have to play Shaedon Sharpe at the 3. You could play him like 3 minutes a half, 4 minutes a half at the 3, and that's fine. But a little bit of middle second quarter while you're rotating through guys, not that big of a deal. No problem. You can find minutes for him. I think then the question is how much do you play Nassir Little? And how much do you play Nassir Little knowing that you kind of want Chris Murray to get some action too? But gets a little, it doesn't, again, right now, the Blazers rosters, they're going to be really small, but there are minutes for Nas to play. I think this is why I'm sort of parsing this as a big question. Where are Nassir Little's minutes come from? Is because last year at this time, I thought Nassir Little was going to be the Trailblazers starting small forward. I thought he was going to be the small minute starter, and then they were going to play Josh Hart a bunch of minutes with the second unit on the ball. In fact, that's kind of what they told Josh Hart heading into the summer at his ex interview. Hey, we're going to see you as playing like some point guardy stuff when you play with the second unit, like a power forward on defense and a point guard offense, some like sort of on-ball creation responsibilities. They never gave that responsibility to Josh Hart. They basically never gave him any on-ball reps. Was that a mistake? I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it was certainly the plan changed. And the plan changed in part because it's pretty clear Chauncey Billups didn't trust Nassir Little. Not that they had beef. I don't mean to insinuate they had beef, but when there was a minutes pinch last year, Nas was the one who felt it. And it's because Justice Winslow was playing over him. And Josh Hart was just playing a ton of minutes because he was so reliable and brought it. So he was just a really good defensive player in terms of effort and going to be in the right spot type of thing. His overall size maybe got him in trouble sometimes, but he got after it. And coaches like guys who get after it. It's coaches prefer veterans who are low mistake guys. And Nas was making some mistakes on defense. If Thybulle plays 20 minutes a night, pretty simple math here, there's 28 more minutes to play at small forward. I think you can split some of those between Chris Murray and Nassir Little. But unlike last year, when I thought Nas was poised for a 25-minute a night role, I do not think that's available to him anymore. And he's starting the beginning of a contract extension, 4 years, about $7 and some change $1 million a year, right around average annual value of $7 million. He's not, he's got long-term money invested in him, but at a very, very, very small number in the grand scheme of things, well below the mid-level exception, which is around 12 and will continue to climb. Nas, the organization is committed to him in terms of years, but they certainly are not committed to him in terms of he needs to play big role because he's getting big money type of thing. I think the sort of question is Nassir Little, in year 5, ready to go and be as impactful enough such that rookie 23-year-old Chris Murray is buried behind him, or does that become a competition spot for the backup minutes at small forward? There is time for both of them to play. Like, to be clear, there's time for both of them to play, because I think Murray can play a little bit of the 4 based on how the roster looks now. And obviously, if there's a Damian Lillard trade, they're likely to get back some wingy type players. If you're familiar with the roster on a certain team in South Florida, like wingy type players, and that would complicate things. But for now, I think there is not one of the big questions for me. This might not be a big question for you, but I'm the nerd who does this show. Is like, could Nas sneak back into that, maybe start at small forward spot like he was a year ago? I think absolutely not. I think Matisse Thybulle or Shaedon Sharpe would be above him in terms of like, folks, we just like to roll out at the small forward spot. We, the royal we, being how the Blazers would approach it. And I think Nas is somewhere behind those two. And I think what you hope for him is that he's clearly ahead of the rookie Chris Murray, and then he can build from there, and that he, starts to look like an NBA caliber player. He has shown flashes of it. He just has not been able to stay on the floor and be productive enough. And I don't think he earned the coach's trust last year. This year's going to be a little bit different, likely, because they're not going to be chasing or like pseudo chasing a playoff spot. So they're just going to be, there are minutes to be had for Nas, but the idea that he was, that 25-minute a night role has diminished a great deal. Okay, as we move up the chain, centers, huh? The Blazers have one of those, certainly not two. Let's talk about that in the third segment. Join me there, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked on Blazers. So, we talk guards. I think the guard minutes are there if Dame's not there. Obviously, a Dame trade is going to impact the front court. It might impact the back court a little bit, but the front court more. So the forward rotation will change. Don't think it changes Anthony Simon's minutes. Don't think it changes Jeremy Grant's minutes. And in the grand schemes, if Nurk is still on the team post-trade, probably won't change his minutes too much. Nurk is going to play somewhere between 28 and 30 minutes. The most Nurk can like realistically play like in his career, and he's about to turn 28. It might even be Nurk's birthday as you're listening to this. Let's look this up. I know he's got a birthday sometime in the middle of August. It is nope. Next week. We're a week shy of Nurk's 29th birthday. So happy birthday next week to Nurk. But even be 29 when the season starts. Even in his best shape, he's playing 29, 31 a night. And he's unlikely as he gets older to play more minutes. So even if you say like max Nurk, you're talking maximum Nurk. Maximum Nurk is like, we'll call it 30, just for simple math. There are 18 more center minutes that need to be had. And as the Blazers roster currently stands, who the heck plays those minutes? I guess Jeremy Grant could play a little bit, and let me tease that out some more for you. The last summer, not like a few months ago, but the summer of 2022, when the Blazers were also like comically undersized, but had Drew Eubanks on the roster, but it felt like, hey, Drew Eubanks is more of a third center, not a backup center. And in Summer League, both Joe Cronin and Chauncey Billups teased the idea of playing Jeremy Grant at the 5. I think once they saw him play and his sort of lack of physicality in there, they were like, just kidding. Well, he's like maybe like got good length to be a shot blocker and weak side stuff, just like the overall physicality, particularly on the glass. It's like, that's not ideal. And I think was going to be a time when they would have played, and they did this a very small amount early in the season. Justice Winslow's season ended like the week of Christmas, but to play Jeremy Grant and Justice Winslow there, because Winslow's physicality kind of made up for some of the stuff that Jeremy Grant didn't have. Your coworkers matter a lot, right? But they were comfortable this time last year, or maybe July of 2022, like floating the idea of going small. They never really did it. It's clear that Chauncey Billups, like once he saw it, he was like, oof, no, I'm not comfortable with that. But they were clearly, in the way that they had considered playing Josh Hart, some backup on-ball minutes with the second unit, they considered playing Jeremy Grant with the backups as the backup center. To me, it strikes me that as we revisit this, The ideas of maybe roster building and what the coach decides to do have not lined up. I think a key part of the Blazers rebuild is have those two things actually be aligned, have those two things actually line up. This isn't unique to the Blazers or Chauncey Billups or anything. It's just that you want these things to like cleanly align and not like, hey, this is an idea we had, but the coach isn't comfortable with it, because ultimately, like I've said this a bunch, like what a coach does is decide who's in the game. All that is to say, that's that long sidetrack we took is like 18 minutes of backup center minutes that are totally bizarre. Who's going to play him? Jeremy Grant? Jabari Walker, I think, is like a legitimate candidate. You could throw Ibu Baji's name in there. Baji's just like not an NBA player right now. He looked a little bit shaky in Summer League, even a lot of bit shaky in Summer League. He's big, and he has some intriguing. In fact, like I think the most intriguing thing about Baji is his passing skills. I think he's really slow with his sort of defensive recognition. He can block shots and he gets it. And when he's standing there and you're coming at him, he blocks shots right. Like he blocks shots much better when it's like right in front of him is what I was trying to say. He blocks shots, but like the lateral movement, the anticipation to get over there, to me. And I haven't seen him play very much. And it's like very, very, very small sample size. I don't really see it. I think the Blazers coaches in Summer League, just based on interviews, seem to be more excited about him than I was. And I'm going to chalk that up to saying nice things about people in Vegas, because it's a nice time to say nice things about people. I'm going to trust my eyeballs on this one. He looked far away from it. If the Blazers are not a very good team to a straight up one of the worst teams in the league, I don't think it's a huge deal for Baji to play those minutes, but he's not ready to play 18 minutes a night. That doesn't make sense. John Butler Jr. is like a 3. He's 7 feet tall, but he's a 3. He's definitely not a center in the league. And if you see people call him a center, he's listed on center. He's listed as center some places. Just tell him you've actually watched him play, and he's very clearly a small forward, maybe power forward, but he's he's much more wing than center. So it's Jeremy Grant, or it's Jabari Walker, or it's Baji, or And I think is the actual answer to this question. The biggest question facing the Blazers is who's going to play backup center, and almost certainly the answer to that question is not on the roster currently. And we've gone over a bunch of options, right? Gone over a bunch of options in the past. The list of names that are out there are like not super intriguing, like Bismack Biyombo and Myers Leonard and JaVale McGee if you're into it, and Billy Hernan Gomez. There are some sort of like veterans who are capable of playing 18 NBA minutes, and that's fine. I think if the Blazers go young, they'd probably be better. If they go like full rebuild, they'd probably be better off having one of those guys on the roster, like just like a veteran presence type who doesn't really play, except if you absolutely break the glass or have some injuries type of thing, like emergency center, and then like a young sort of upsidey type. Maybe Baji is the upsidey type, but to me, he's better off getting real minutes in the G League. He's a two-way guy anyways, but getting off real minutes in the G League, that's where his upside is going to come. So the answer to the question, who's the backup center, is probably someone who is not currently on the roster. Blazers have 12 players in the roster. You're allowed to carry up to 21, including two-way guys. The Blazers currently have 14, if you include both their two-way guys. Carry up to 21 through training camp, so they could add 7 more bodies. They're not adding training camp contracts. While the rest of the league is adding training camp contracts, the Blazers are literally doing nothing. And my read on why they're literally doing nothing is because they're just keeping all the money set aside in case the Damian Lillard trade happens. They don't want to be pressed up against it or any surprises. Okay, this deal came about and we've got these moving parts with 4 different teams, and they don't want to end up being an accidental luxury team or a luxury tax team or a team that has to cut salary to become a luxury tax team so some other team could just hold them over the barrel and say, okay, give us a second round pick and we'll do it. Like they are not chancing anything. Exhibit 10 and training camp contracts have very light guarantees, so it'll be like $50,000 or $100,000 guaranteed, $150,000 guaranteed sometimes. It's like a small amount of money. It's like $50,000 come to camp, and then they decide if we want you. But if not, it's just like a way to convince an agent and their player, like, hey, sign this contract, sign this uncertain contract with us, just to like show up for a few days in October. They can add those players, and they probably will. at some point. But the reason that they haven't done anything is because they are still waiting on a possible Damian Lillard trade, which is why I continue to maintain that I kind of think it's going to happen before the season starts, because if they were really comfortable, I think one of the signs with like, okay, we're just not even comfortable. If they really had realized, okay, we're not going to trade Dame, they would make positive moves to like improve the roster in terms of just like making it make sense. Because right now the roster doesn't really make sense. It just doesn't really, they're too small. They're just wildly too small. They don't really have a backup power forward. Like, we didn't mention it, but Jeremy Grant's going to play those 35 minutes. If Jabari Walker plays what he's going to play, some backup power forward and then some backup center, is Chris Murray your backup power forward? Does Nassir Little and Chris Murray share the court with both of them kind of interchangeably playing 3-4, Jabari Walker at the 5? That's a wild front court to put out there. That's really something. It's just not a competitive roster. They got to add some more. And the reason they haven't done anything is because they're keeping all of it in stasis, because the big move might be coming. Yeah, that's right. 30 minutes into the show, or 25 minutes into the show, we did end up kind of talking about the Damian Lillard trade. I'm telling you, it's hanging over all of this. Okay, in tomorrow's show, we will go over the NBA's regular season schedule. The Blazers schedule is going to be announced on Thursday. That means Friday's show, when you come back and listen to this one on Friday, August 18th, you'll hear a breakdown of the Blazers' schedule, their play-in schedule, and all to look forward to with real dates on the calendar. Tell your friends about this podcast. They can get it wherever they listen to podcasts, and also on YouTube 3 days a week, all August long, and then back to 5 days a week when we hit that second week of September. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.